You're listening to Impulse to Innovation, the Institution of Mechanical Engineers podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Helen Mees. As a global community of mechanical engineers with over 120,000 members in 140 countries, the Institution of Mechanical Engineers has been at the heart of the engineering profession since 1847. The institution's mission is to improve the world through engineering by sharing the latest news, views and insight into the creative world of technology and the people that make it happen. Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Impulse to Innovation 2022. If you're a regular listener, it's great to have you back. If you're joining us for the first time, well, welcome. We hope you enjoy the I2I episodes on offer. We have a fantastic lineup of topics for you this year, which will be focusing on the institution's key themes of climate change, infection control, transport and education, and how mechanical engineers can help to solve the global challenges facing society today and in the future. We will also be out and about with some more live streaming shows at the institution's challenge competitions throughout the year, so keep listening for more of the dates on those events. But if you weren't already aware, 2022 is an extra special year for the institution as we are celebrating our 175th birthday. In the autumn of 1846, a group of engineers met to watch locomotive trials at the Lickey Incline near Bromsgrove. Here, they discussed the ideas of forming an institution of mechanical engineers to meet the needs of what had become a burgeoning separate discipline within engineering. Four of this group, Edward Humphrys, Archibald Slate, James McConnell and Charles Beyer, signed their names to a letter which was circulated among prospective members. The letter invited recipients to attend a meeting at the Queen's Hotel, Birmingham on Wednesday, October the 7th, 1846. The result of this meeting was the formation of a committee to draw up and agree the rules and regulations of the new institution. On the 27th of January 1847, 56 engineers and manufacturers met at the Queen's Hotel for a general meeting to formally found the institution. George Stephenson was elected the institution's first president, and by 1848 there were over 162 members. One Birdcage Walk was officially opened on the 16th and 17th of May 1899, celebrated by a two-day conference for members and 750 guests. Today, we are a global community of mechanical engineers, represented in over 140 countries, the largest network of mechanical engineering knowledge, skills and opportunity anywhere in the world. So, what's in store for the institution this year? And what are its members and staff looking forward to most? In this month's episode, my guests are Lucy Bonner, Institution Archivist, Paul Jones, Technical Strategy Board Chair and past Chair of the Automotive Division, and Joe Horton, Member Operations Director. Lucy Bonner has been the institution's archivist for over 2 years and is responsible for the management of both the physical and digital collections kept within the library at One Birdcage Walk. Over the last few months, leading up to the anniversary, Lucy has been taking a look back through the archive at the earliest documents pertaining to the institution's founding. I chatted to Lucy about why the institution's history is so important to the engineering community and what she has found to be the most interesting aspects of change over the last 175 years. Lucy, thank you ever so much for joining me on the podcast today. My first question to you is, why is the institution's history so valuable?
So I believe there's a number of reasons why it's so valuable. So, for example, it provides a perspective on the history of technical developments within mechanical engineering, about the development of engineering education, about engineering standards. And I think the really important word there is perspective. So it is one viewpoint created by the institution. But it's worth noting that the history of the institution is intertwined with societal changes. So engineers have always looked to develop solutions for the challenges of the day. And that might have been things like industrial steel or mass production or mechanical heart valves. So the institution's history plays a role as a reflection of society in a way. And that can also be seen in our membership records, which are not only particularly useful for those people who are researching individuals, but it also shows the developments and changes in engineering education, from apprenticeships to evening classes, day release classes, degree courses, apprenticeships, sort of back to apprenticeships again. And also they show, sort of provide an insight, I suppose, into past engineering networks. When an individual applied to become a member of the institution, they had to provide a proposer, a seconder, and some other individuals to recommend their application. And that might have been a college lecturer, an employer, a former employer, a colleague. And you really get an idea of how well the engineering world was connected.
Yeah, I mean, it strikes me as being really sort of almost like a cake. You can kind of cut through this history, can't you, and see all these layers of things that were going on throughout the last 175 years, and really get a picture for the way people lived, worked, communicated, and all of that really must paint quite a vivid picture to you, as you know, in the work that you do as an archivist.
Yeah, it really does. And you also just see the membership records are a really good example, because you also just see the impact of events that had absolutely nothing to do with engineering in a way, but you see the impact of that on individuals. And you see that through things like individuals anglicising their names, for example,
Right.
which has become sort of a fairly common thing. And you also then, begin to see women members. So
Yeah.
you sort of see changes in society that really you wouldn't necessarily expect to see in an engineering archive.
Yeah.
But it's much more than an engineering archive.
Absolutely. Well, I suppose that leads to my next question, which I guess must be quite a tricky one. It's going to be a tricky one. What aspect of the last 175 years have you found most interesting as an archivist?
I think the thing for me that's most interesting is it's a bit of an odd answer, but it's the amount of change that has occurred whilst some things have very much stayed the same. So that sounds a bit odd, but I think, for example, using the institution as an example, 175 years ago, when a group of engineers got together to found an institution of mechanical engineers, we didn't have aeroplanes, we didn't have cars, we didn't have
Yeah.
computers, all those things that we didn't have, that we just use in our day-to-day lives and take for granted. And yet at that point, the aim of the institution was to enable engineers to increase their knowledge and give an impulse to inventions likely to be useful to the world. And we can now see the results of some of those inventions. And so whilst there has been all this change, a remarkable amount of change, some things have stayed exactly the same.
Yeah.
That sort of driving ethos has remained the same. So I think that's the sort of the most interesting thing, is that you can have sort of change happening around you, and yet there's also a sort of a sense of stability within that.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it really puts it into perspective when you think about the technology that has developed since that first group of engineers got together in Birmingham, and things that they never would have thought about we're doing today. Robots in surgery and landing on the moon and all of these things that not just mechanical engineers but engineers in general have created. And that inspiration, I suppose, comes from that first group, doesn't it? That underlying drive to innovate and drive to create a better world really kind of underpins everything that has developed since then, really.
Yeah, I think you're quite right. So when One Birdcage Walk the institution's headquarters opened in 1899, it was state of the art because it had a telephone and it had a lift. And, they were things that they were rightfully very proud of at the time. It wasn't until a year later in 1900 that the first paper was delivered on road locomotion. And now, we look at the Formula Student competition and we've got electric vehicles and autonomous vehicles. And when Healy Shaw delivered this paper on road locomotion, could he imagine in 120 years' time, as it would be from 1900, exactly what has come from that?
Yeah. No, it's an amazing thing to kind of think about and to be very proud of it as a member of the institution and as an engineer. It's wonderful to know that we do stand on the shoulders of giants in terms of the technology that's gone before us, which is amazing. So what are you looking forward to then in 2022 in the HQ, in the library, in the archive? What is it that you're really excited about this coming year?
So we've just launched a virtual archive gallery for the 175th anniversary. And so we're quite excited to have digitised some of the earliest institution minutes and put those online. It sounds like they quite enjoyed having dinner and drinks after their early meetings, which, can't blame them. They've done important work. So we're really looking forward to sort of over the year, we're going to be adding some more things to that. We've also had some audiovisual material digitized, or it's in the process of being digitized at the moment, and that's interviews with automotive engineers. So we're really excited about getting that back because at the moment that is on real audio tape. So we have no way of making that accessible.
Wow.
When we get that back, we will have a digital version of that. So that's a really exciting thing to share.
Yeah, look forward to hearing that. That'll be really interesting to hear those voices from the past. Well, I know that you have provided me with some quite useful information over this last year because we've been looking at the history of the biomedical engineering division, and we're very excited because we found out some really exciting stuff just looking back at those minutes of the meetings. So I'm really looking forward to sharing that with the biomedical community in the coming year. Lucy, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to tell us a little bit about what's going on and why you, as an archivist, are so passionate about our community as engineers. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Paul Jones is a Fellow of the institution, past chair of the Automotive Division, and is presently the chair of the Technical Strategy Board, one of the 7 operational boards which provide insight and guidance to the trustees. Paul's role as TSB chair is to develop and continually review activities across the 18 divisions and groups which represent the institution's industry specialisms. As chair of the Biomedical Engineering Division, I work closely with Paul, so it was great to get to talk to him about the key engineering themes, the impact these will have on the working lives of engineers, and what he personally was looking forward to as TSB chair in 2022. Paul, thank you ever so much for joining me today to talk about TSB and the work that they do. We have a very exciting year ahead of us, Paul, this being our anniversary year. So what is the Technical Strategy Board focusing on as its key themes this year?
Well, Helen, firstly, let me say thank you very much for the opportunity to come and talk today about what the TSB is focusing on. As you're aware, for a number of years, the institution's had a number of key themes: energy and environment, education, manufacturing, transport, and of course, healthcare. With COP26 last year, we chose to zero in on 3 of the 5 themes. That's energy transition, clean transport, and cities and the built environment. Oh, and I also mustn't forget the work we've been doing on infection control, particularly with the Pandemic Infection Control Solutions Initiative.
Yeah, that's been quite in the forefront of our minds, hasn't it, over the last few months? And I know the committee that came out of that has done an awful lot of work. So how does this flow down to the members themselves, and what impact does it have on their everyday working lives as engineers?
Oh, well, significant. I mean, if we took, for example, the clean transport policy, and you think about the transport hierarchy, and we set a transport hierarchy as an institution a number of years ago, and very simply there are three priorities there which affect everybody. The first one is reduction in demand for transportation. So, think about things like remote working, reducing travel distances, reducing freight demand and freight transport distances. The second priority is system efficiency all around modal shift. So enable the choice of transport modes with the lowest environmental impacts. So can we shift a mode from cars to walking or cycling? Can we increase the use of public transport, buses, trams, trains? And can we have increased system efficiency then by switching, for example, to battery for electric cars, vans and buses? And then the third priority is, improved transport vehicle energy efficiency and the use of renewable fuels. So, how can we identify opportunities for the development and application of these new technologies, which produce efficiency improvements and reduce the energy required for transport? So, that's just an example with the transport focus. If we think about infection control, you think about all the work we've been doing looking at sort of clean air solutions and ventilation in buildings. So again, just a couple of examples there.
So actually, the work that TSB does is really quite important, because what we say and do at the institution in terms of developing policy and recommendations to government can seriously have an effect on our everyday working lives and practices as engineers. So, Paul, what would you say is the best way for members to get involved in things like the division and groups work, which is part of TSB?
Well, Helen, there's a number of ways of doing that. If you go onto the institution's website, very simply on the homepage, you've got the Get Involved tab there. So, we've got the Young Members Network, we've got the sort of member networks near you, which cover the regions. And then as we zoom in on the Technical Strategy Board, we've got what's the industries and specialisms. As you know, the Technical Strategy Board is made up of the 18 divisions and groups, which split by industry sector and by specialism. And again, if you visit the website and visit any of those particular pages, and you can sort of reach out to the member network engagement people through that. So many opportunities, and we're always looking for volunteers to bring fresh blood, new ideas, new thinking.
And I'll make sure the links that you just mentioned, Paul, are on the page on our podcast website. Well, I think this year being our 175th anniversary, I think there's a great opportunity if any of our members who are listening at the moment, want to do something new or try something new over this coming year, then joining the divisions and groups, I think, is a great way to do that, isn't it, Paul?
I would absolutely encourage that. I mean, as we look forward, we look at the big challenges society has, things like climate change, and it's going to be engineers that solve those problems. So for me, it's a fascinating time to be involved in engineering.
Yeah, and you and I both are on TSB together. I as chair of one of the divisions, so we know just how passionate and how exciting the work is that members are doing across all the divisions and groups. So it is a great time to get involved. So I suppose this is a great way to lead to my final question, really, which is, what are your hopes for the institution in the next 175 years?
Well, I think that it remains at the forefront of professional engineering, and it is a thought leader. It is a recognised professional body in terms of go-to for government, impartial professional advice, for example, and really that I guess that we are leading the charge in terms of solving some of these big issues that society faces. I've already mentioned climate change, and if you look back recently and you think about the sterling job done with vaccination. I heard last week, I think in the lecture that Sir Patrick Vallance gave, that there have been 8 billion doses of COVID vaccine administered. And it's engineers that scaled that up to mass production. You remember in the early days when people were worried about vaccine supply, and it was engineers that kind of stepped up to the plate and scaled that up. So for me, doing our bit for society, going forward as we have done for the last 175 years.
Yeah, I feel your passion there in terms of why this is so important. And I was talking to Lucy, our archivist, earlier on, and she was talking about what the engineers who founded the institution would think of the last 175 years. We're at that point where looking forward to the next 175. We have no idea what sorts of technologies are going to be developed, but engineers are going to be the foundation from which that all comes from. So it's a very exciting time, I think, for us and the institution.
I totally agree, Helen. I can't think, in my 35 years in the engineering profession, I can't think of a more rewarding career.
I think that is a perfect note to end on there, Paul. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what's in the calendar for the various divisions and groups over the coming year. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Helen. It's been a pleasure.
Jo Horton has been a stalwart member of the institution's staff for over 20 years, beginning with her role as Head of Engineering Operations, then Head of International Development, and now as Director of Member Operations. Jo is passionate about the institution and its members, and works closely with many of the operational and governance boards and volunteers to ensure everyone has the best possible experience throughout their time as members of the institution. I started by asking Jo about the year ahead and the strategic direction the institution was taking. Jo, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast today. It's going to be a really busy year ahead for the institution, isn't it? Celebrating our 175th anniversary, deciding on the future of a HQ building, continuing all that wonderful implementation of governance changes. But what about you? As Director of Member Operations, I bet your calendar is already full until this Christmas, isn't it already? So what is your focus for this year in terms of member-facing services and support?
Thank you, Helen. Firstly, this is my first podcast with you, so I'm very excited. And hopefully it might be one of a few more in the future, depending how I get on. But yeah, this is really different, Helen, for so many reasons. But the fundamental one for us is the fact it's our 175th anniversary. Who'd have thought it? It's such an exciting year that it's a time to celebrate. And I think there's a lot of reasons in society, not just in the UK, but globally, to start sort of trying to celebrate going forward. And I think it's a great opportunity to celebrate the achievements of the institution and the people.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. And also that the contribution that mechanical engineering has made to society, but yet importantly, still going to inspire the next generation, that future group of engineers. We were talking about it earlier in the year when we were planning our activities, and it's about honouring our past, all the fantastic people and achievements, but also looking to the exciting future that engineering is going to bring to us all. And I think it's also really important to look at, in terms of mechanical engineers and our members, I mean, in terms of the activities that actually start looking and solving global challenges. And I think you've probably heard on previous podcasts about our policy priorities going forward around climate change, education, infection control now, very topical, as well as transport. Really focusing back on why we existed in the first place, about improving the world through engineering. So as Director of Member Ops, it's a really exciting year to focus on some key themes. There's lots to do, but in terms of the key ones, I think probably if I give two, rather than go on for too long around it, but two. One is about keeping that focus of supporting and developing our engineers, representing engineers and technicians to the whole of the community, and really trying to support their career development, no matter what stage they're at during their career progression. And I think secondly is around maximising the impact of our members. There is such a collective force around the world, a diversity of engineers and technicians, and what can the institution do collectively to promote engineering, informing opinion, stimulating that innovation, at the end of the day for the benefit of society. And I think this year, linking that with the 175th is something quite special.
We know as engineers that we're standing on the shoulders of giants. I've said this
what a
more
good
than
phrase.
Yeah, more than once. And it's this opportunity, as you rightly said, to look back at where we've come from, and that first group of engineers who met up, who wanted to create a community for themselves, to what we are today is quite astounding. I'm sure they wouldn't even recognise this international community that we've created, and I'm very excited about the 175th anniversary. I really enjoyed listening to Patrick Vallance the other day, giving his talk. It just started off the year, and it sounds like you've got an awful lot of things planned to really kick things off and really showcase what our engineering community offers.
Yeah, very much so. And I think not only because of the 175th anniversary this year, but also what the whole world has been through over the last couple of years with COVID, I think it's about bringing people together from both those angles. In the last couple of years, there's been a huge amount of innovation as well as challenge. And from an institution perspective, some of the innovation and change is bringing that community together. So no matter where you may be based in the UK, in the world, is actually the technology we've just had to jump onto to embrace has made such a difference. And I think it's really important that sense of belonging because of the community, like you mentioned, and also in terms of the technology we're using, not to lose that.
Yeah.
So I think part of our priorities is to learn from the last few years about all the good stuff, all the things that have worked well, and also learn from the things that haven't, and make sure we don't do those again. But the transformation, not just in IMechE, but in lots of organisations, of using digital platforms, reaching out from a sense of emotional well-being, as well as how's the engineering going, has made us a different style of organisation. And it's really important that we learn that and carry that on into the future. So I think certainly in terms of our membership, I think you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, the introduction, you talk about 115,000 members globally. 33% of those not based in the UK, very important members and growing. And so all the activities we consider right now, all the new services and benefits we might think about going forward, is about the inclusivity of those, the diversity of them. Have we thought about that product, that service? Will it reach the audience we want it to? And I think that's a mindset change. As well as maybe a process or structural change which has happened. And I think the pandemic has helped that move quicker, at a quicker pace than perhaps would have happened, if I'm being honest. So it's quite exciting that through the 175th, it can be celebrated anywhere.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to listening and hearing what our members want to say about the institution right now. So part of the celebration is listening. And that includes so tell us about experience you've had at IMechE over the years. What was it like? Did you enjoy it? Tell us what you'd like to do in the future. So it's about celebrating the past and the people, and also sort of going forward. But we want everyone to join that celebration this year.
Yeah, well, I know that there's a 175 email address as well, and we'll make sure that that's on the podcast notes as well. So if people want to get in touch, is that the best way to do that?
Yes. And we also like a hashtag at IMechE these days. So hashtag I am IMechE and hashtag forward thinkers. But we will accept information and discussion in any format here at the institution. But certainly, yes, if the straightforward information, there's an email address and a website which we can share with the audience.
Excellent. That's fantastic. I will definitely put that up on there. Now, I know you, Joe, very well, and I know how passionate you are about our international member engagement. So how will our global engineering community be celebrating the 175th anniversary? And why do you feel being part of this global community is so important for engineers today?
So, yes, I think you discovered one of my guilty pleasures, Helen, at the institution. I worked with international members for many years and had some fantastic times, and many more to come. With membership of over 115,000 members, many based worldwide, part of the 175th is to celebrate the diversity of our membership and promote inclusion.
Yeah.
So I think it's fundamental in our celebrations, really, and also to share great achievements, share ideas in that community, and that's what IMechE is all about as a professional body. So we're looking forward to hearing and seeing more from our international members this year, and having more debate and tackling those tough issues in engineering going forward. Yeah. And I think that's a really important part as we grow and develop our international footprint.
Well, Jo, we are going to be having a number of international based shows over the coming year on the podcast, and I'm really excited. I'm going to be talking to members of the ISB in a few weeks' time to get their thoughts on what's going on internationally. So, I think there's a great opportunity to share the broader picture of what's going on amongst our engineering members.
I spoke earlier, Helen, around how we want to really ensure we maximise the impact of our members in promoting engineering, informing opinion, stimulating innovation. And I think this truly needs to be done on a global scale to have that most impact for society in terms of our policy priorities going forward: climate sustainability, future transport, infectious disease control, and education. These are all global issues and should be tackled in that way.
Yeah, totally. They underlie everything that we are doing right now as engineers, and this is something that I think is going to be the future of the institution, where we pick up on those issues that are fundamental to what's going on in the world and the challenges we face, and embed them into what we deliver as an institution. So it's really great to hear how that's going to flow into not only the celebrations, but also into the engineering community as well.
And I think if you don't forget, our core purpose is around developing and supporting engineers throughout their career. And, we position ourselves to provide that global engineering standard through professional registration and accreditation and our qualifications. And that way we trying to build like a really thriving engineering international community of engineers and technicians.
Yeah, well, I'm certainly looking forward. I'm already talking to some of our members, biomedical engineering members in Africa, about us doing a joint webinar. So, we'll see how that goes.
Count me in.
Thank you. Now, my last question to you really is about the future, I suppose. We've all been cooped up, haven't we, at home over the last 2 years now, and that's really affected the way that we interact with each other, particularly obviously at HQ, which is our home, our community. So what are you and the team particularly looking forward to most this year?
It's a really good question. It feels for myself personally, and many of my colleagues I've spoken to, most members of the staff, we're still in this transition phase. I think there's still some uncertainty, but that also leads to excitement.
Yeah.
So I think our plans aren't set in concrete deliberately, but there is an appetite for further collaboration, which includes more face-to-face. Yeah. So in terms of IMechE, we see perhaps more interaction, keeping the value and the benefit, inclusivity of hybrid working, virtual working, etc. But bringing maybe all of those sort of systems together, where we haven't been able to do that potentially over the last couple of years. Unfortunately, we did go virtual with our Patrick Vallance lecture, but we have several other Prestige lectures planned. And, with all the good wind behind us, these will be, a mixture of hybrid and face-to-face going forward. But I think in terms of excitement as well, is that we know we need to invest more in technology.
Yeah.
And so there's plenty of work being done this year to keep promoting and enhancing and developing our digital platforms. These are the way ahead for the institution. It's important we keep that, but it's really important that we do this and engage our active members along the route who are customers of some of these services. So we need to make sure that they're fit for purpose going forward. But also, I think, in terms of the next generation, we talked about earlier, Helen, around inspiring the next generation of engineers getting on board. So we need to be fit for purpose for what's relevant for those. And not all of it, but a substantial part will be how we deliver that service through digital means.
Yeah, I think the last 2 years has shown us just how different communication actually is, and how these tools need to be incorporated into our everyday working lives. And I think that's a really good opportunity to move forward and really engage our community through those digital platforms.
And another important focus for the institution this year is about the continuing to embed the values of the organisation. So I think inclusion, integrity, innovation and impact.
Yeah.
And these are a real golden thread to all our activities and all our conversations going forward. And they will also, I think, at the end of the day, support and enable the organisation to get the best from our fantastic employees, our volunteers, our fantastic members, and the supporters that truly underpin the institution and the lifeblood of the organisation to really achieve its maximum potential.
Jo, thank you so much for joining me today. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. And I know just how passionate you are about making sure that the members are really part of this whole community. So thanks ever so much for joining me.
Thank you.
That's all for this month. In next month's episode, we will be exploring corrosion engineering, non-destructive testing, and how the IMechE trains engineers to ensure our global infrastructure remains safe and fit for purpose. You've been listening to Impulse to Innovation, the Institution of Mechanical Engineers podcast. Thanks for listening. We'd love to hear from you, so if you'd like to share any news or any feedback with us, then please email us podcast@imeche.org. All the information on this episode can be found in the episode notes.